All right, so we're gonna take a look at the Avalon Mechbox. It's also called the VR16 series here in the United States. Now, the version I'm looking at here is actually the European version. There's gonna be a couple minor, very minor changes in it, particularly around the fire selector on the outside externally, and then the trigger itself. This is the European trigger. The United States trigger is the lightning trigger, so it has a lightning bolt in it. But I wanted to go over this because there are many upgrades and improvements in the VR16 Mechbox over the previous VFC Mechbox. So this is what's in the Avalon series in the AEG. So VR16 or Avalon are kind of interchangeable. So we're gonna go ahead and just tear into this thing and get it going. First, before we do dive in, notably, before I get in there too much, is a quick change spring system. It does use an Allen key, a hex key right here, and you're gonna actually be able to make that. So you're gonna pop it in, you'll do a 90-degree turn, it will open it up, and you're gonna be able to take that spring out and actually make this change without having to open the Mechbox. You can do it with your finger depending on this, but I will say this, the Avalon itself is a high FPS AEG, so you're gonna look at something around the neighborhood, at least in the US version, around 400 feet per second. Alternately, if you don't have a hex key, you can press turn and very carefully remove that. So pliers do work pretty well in the absence of an Allen key. So once we have the spring out with the spring guide, I will show you this. You're looking at a bearing, a ball bearing spring guide. So you have a washer, a series of ball bearings here, and a sleeve, and then another washer down below. That extra little washer space, as you add up, will actually pre-compress your spring a little bit and give you a little higher feet per second power. So I'm just going to go ahead and push these to the side. Again, all metal components here, quick change spring. So you do have to take this out of the Mechbox to get to it, but you don't have to actually take the Mechbox apart when doing it. Also, when doing assembly and disassembly, having that spring out makes it a lot easier to work inside. So we're gonna speed through this. One thing that's notable, this piece here is actually a patented invention, and even though some other companies have made a copy of it, VFC has a patent on this, and this is actually the locking mechanism when you actually pull the bolt back and holds and it catches it in place. The bar comes through here. The way this design works through different bolt catches, this is actually a patented component. But again, like I said, some companies have copied that. Just thought it was kind of a neat little factoid throughout the years that this is something that they went so far as to throw a patent on. Also, you notice before I go ahead and pop this open, there's a couple things I do have to remove because this is an ambidextrous fire selector on here, and that's why you have these extra gears. So you will have those on there that will need to be taken off, and then this piece, it's just pressure fit on there, so you should be able to take it right off with your hands. I did notice there was a small bit of glue on this. I don't know, your mileage may vary on the second one, so just keep in mind when you're taking that off. That way you can access it. The other side, you'll be able to pull it through, and then this piece here, which is part of the fire selector, can you typically stay in there or come out as well. So they are ball bearing bushings on all of those there, and then of course, like I said, I talked about the trigger. Another thing, if you guys didn't notice, I don't know if you ever wondered why there's a hole right here. This is a great way, if you look inside this hole, when your motor is in here, because the motor actually engages through this hole here up in, it'll let you check your motor engagement to the bevel gear. And that's something, so when you're shimming a Mechbox and doing work, it's a good way to check your motor engagement in here to make sure you've shimmed this gear to the motor gear itself, to the actual the bevel gear, to the pinion gear on the motor, which is the gear that goes inside. Just a little tip. All right, so with everything out, we're gonna go ahead and pop the shell off. The good news is, because we've taken the spring out, we're not gonna have an explosion. So we're gonna actually be able to just go ahead and make that change. On this, we are looking at, you kind of your standard nice reinforced material here, extra material here on the Mechbox. One thing of note, and I don't think it's gonna be an issue because of the metal they use at all, it's not radiused. So we're not looking at the radius corners. Some companies I've noticed have been radiusing the corners, which means they've been drilled a little bit, so they're rounded, and I guess it takes a little stress off. These are actually rounded a bit better in the mold, so they actually, I know you won't be able to see it in the video unless you just pause and zoom in, but the corners are rounded. Sometimes they go really sharp and do sharp angles, so like 90 degrees. This one has a little bit of a rounding, so it should take the stress off. But again, good amount of material, nice thick metal on the outside. Inside pretty, your offering, standard offering on the shell. No issues with Mechbox shells these days, not like in years and years past. So internally, first of note, I'm gonna go ahead and just hit this one up because this is the big boy. An internal Mosfet, it does live inside the Mechbox shell. So it's in here, it is shrunk wrap inside of like some heat shrink tubing, which is nice. It does route through. The good news, what I really like about your internal Mosfet is you don't have a Mosfet down in the battery, so not here in line. You're not dealing with, if you have a buffer tube and you're putting a battery down in the buffer tube to crunch or crimp or do cause an issue with your Mosfet. That can happen and that can be an issue. Also in your gear set, everything's pretty much what you would expect to find. Nice solid gears. Everything's, show you quite a few teeth here, and that is for your anti-reversal latch. Some will only have 4. This one actually has a lot more. It has, looks like 8 on there. So that prevents it from, when it rotates and starts turning the opposite direction with this reversal latch here. Reversal latch itself is a little reinforced. The post itself is thicker, it's bigger in there. So on that. Gears itself, we'll get to those in a second. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this portion out. The compression system. So we'll take the compression components out. We'll continue looking at the gears. You do have a delayer in here. It's in here, it's between the original post here for the tappet plate, where it engages in here. The delayer actually engages it a little sooner and lets go of it a little later, and then allows the air nozzle when it's going in here. So this component here, the air nozzle, which the tappet plate mates up to here, to hold back a little longer, letting that BB go and engage and then move forward. What that's good for is if you're looking at high speed, high rate of fire builds, that leaves that gap open a little longer and still lets that BB feed. Without the delayer, it's just that tiny little post. The delayer itself is the larger area around this screw, and I'll try to see if I can focus for you. Right there. So that's the delayer. Because it leaves it open a little bit more, you're ending up with a longer open time, so higher rate of fire. BBs are firing. You're going to be able to get that feeding continually and not have misfeeds because of that. Again, the gears itself, nice and strong, very thick, lots of metal on this. A few holes here for lightning, but no, you're not giving up any reinforcements. All the gears do have VFC stamping on them as well. So once we're done with that, you do have the electrical system. Mosfet, which is fantastic because you have it, so now you don't have to worry about your trigger anymore burning out because you do have a Mosfet in here. That eliminates that issue altogether. So no concern on the trigger contacts. You do have the flat trigger on these. Again, there's 2 different styles. This one here is just a standard cut, and then the hole inside of it looks like a lightning bolt for the lightning trigger. That's gonna be for your US markets, so the ones you're gonna order through Elite Force in the United States. Like I said, we did talk about the anti-reversal latch here, and the spring is very stiff. It's got a lot of good feel to it, so it definitely can have good rebound, nice sharp metal on the edge, and again, like I said, it engages with those teeth here, the second set. Everything looks to be shimmed pretty well. So really, that is what we're looking at in here. I do want to talk about the wiring. It does look like high resistance wiring. It has the kind of, I would say, some of the older wiring was silicone, not in the VFC, but other ones. Now you're seeing as a commonplace this high quality wiring in here. The third wire for the Mosfet is a very thin wire. I don't know if you can even make it out. It routes up against this red one here. So you do have to have 3 wires running to the trigger, to the Mosfet, and then 2 will go on out. But the other one they're using is so small. It is routed very well in here. There's really no chance in this area for it to get caught when the motor engages up inside. They do actually put a nice amount of lube in here, but not too much, which is good. In fact, in the factory, I get to see how little they put on there in the shimming. Watch the full assembly of these mech boxes. Moving on real quick to the piston. Half metal tooth, half plastic. If you do notice, and I'll try to show you on here, let me again focus on that. We're looking at that next to last tooth there has been filed down half. That's for better engagement against your actual last part of the piston. Otherwise, those do wear down anyway. Half metal teeth, so when you're gonna actually start, when you get this is compressing, so as the gear picks it up, it'll grab it and pull. So as it goes back, it gets stiffer and harder. So when it really matters, you've got the metal teeth. That's when the most stress is on it. And then when it gets to the end, it catches and there's no teeth here, so it slams forward and fires. So again, plastic when you're dealing with less resistance, metal when you're dealing with more. It also does keep the piston lightweight. This is red in color, but this is not any old piston here. This is actually a different, a much better material, I can tell in it. You do have a metal piston head, you have an O-ring in here, decent amount of lube, but not too much on it. Like I said, they're not over lubing. You see a lot of companies will just throw a whole bunch of lube in here for that. Cylinder is, I guess it would be a type 1 we're looking at here, type 1 cylinder with the holes here in the very back. In fact, I really think it's a type 05. Somebody who's a tech will have to tell me. It is beveled here on the edges on the inside, so it bevels out. That, in case when the piston goes all the way to the back, you don't have those really sharp edges to catch on the O-ring, so you don't be tearing there. You do have the cylinder head. and air nozzle. Air nozzle does have O-rings inside. I know it's gonna be very tough to see here. You do have a metal air nozzle post here, but the rest of it is plastic, or on the cylinder head itself. So it's plastic and all that, with the exception of the metal post. I can tell you this, the fitment, just feeling it right here, you can feel it. You see how it doesn't slide? It's got and that's good. That's actually a good thing. It's really good because that O-ring is sealing in very well inside of it. So all in all, your compression system is good. Kappa Plate, again, when you look at your failure components, you need to have something that will eventually fail in your Mechbox. Otherwise, your gears get broken or something metallic, or your motor or something breaks. So your two failure components are gonna be really, you're looking at your tappet plate itself and your piston itself. Those are the two you're gonna be working with. So those are the ones, they're gonna be typically made of a material like a plastic that is gonna be a little more sacrificial in nature versus the metal components, because those are the ones you do want to fail. So putting this all back together really quick, I'm gonna just toss it back in before I put it all back together. So I know a lot of people like to ask about this one aspect of Mechboxes, especially when you get into the more tech inclined. We're gonna look at angle of engagement here. So angle engagement is where you're looking at how this, go ahead and put this in place. Make it easy for you. So angle engagement is how these components work. And I'm gonna take this out to give you guys a better representation. It's how that picks up in there, where it mates. And the angle of engagement on this is actually pretty darn good. And it's, if you guys can really zoom in, I'm gonna try to bring it up to you. So that's gonna be your engagement point on the actual piston itself. So as we continue, you can see as it runs through the cycle. And you notice you only have that much, how little, here click, every click is that, so you have very little reversal, so you won't have any back flip. So right at that point, that's your release point, and then the piston will fire back forward. So again, I'm just gonna run it right till it picks up again so you can see the angle of engagement right about there. That's it. So, and that's where it starts to pick up that piston and bring it back. So for you guys who always ask about that, that is it. This is the flat trigger, like I said. This one is the component for the European market. The US does have that lightning bolt. So that's pretty much it. If you guys wanted to see the inside of the VR16, also known as the Avalon Mechbox, now you've seen it and you have any questions or any comments on here, anything I may have missed, you want to put some opinions on this Mechbox, let me know what you guys think about this. I'm curious, especially you guys who are techs out there, do a lot of teching, upgrading. I'm really curious to hear your input on this, on what you see, what you think they've done, and if there's any improvements you think they can do in the future. Also, don't forget, guys, if you haven't done it before, I'd love you to like, comment, and subscribe down there so you're in the know. I do 3 videos a week, every single week. Well, again, thanks for watching here, the teardown of the VR16/Avalon Mechbox, and until next time, go out, play some airsoft, have some fun, but no matter what you do, call your freaking hits.